Welcome in, Dween Nation. We are the Dween Sports Podcast, and we are just about to get started. But before we do, we'd love if you could like, comment, subscribe, and share so we can continue to be your fantasy sports podcast. Thanks for being part of Dween Nation, and enjoy the show. Welcome in, Dween Nation. This is your host, Justin Pies, alongside Genoa Agudelo, and today we are talking our running back rankings, our top 10 guys for fantasy football drafts and half PPR this season. Super excited to discuss our favorite picks here because, man, running backs are uber important. They fall off, they drastically after you get past 20, 25, maybe 30 running backs. So we need to discuss these top guys here, where you should pick them in your, early rounds in your drafts. But super excited to do that. But before we do, how you doing, Genoa?
Yo, Dween Nation. I'm so excited. We're on running backs here in fantasy, and we're getting things going there, Justin. I mean, just a couple weeks away. We're less than a month from kickoff, and I know every single weekend here on out, up until that first week, there's going to be drafts going on all over the world. So, hey, what better networks are coming than Dween Sports here? We got a ton of content on fantasy. We love fantasy. It's pretty much our bread and butter here. We love our Dween Sport, our fantasy. And so running backs is very critical. It's how, you attack the drafts in the first couple rounds, not to mention your handcuffs. And so I'm excited to talk about at least the top 10 for sure.
Let's do it. Let's get into our top guys here, where we actually, right off the bat, we have differentiating takes with the number one overall running back. I have Bijan Robinson. That I guess is how you say it correctly. Bijan, not Bijan. Bijan. Okay. Got it. But yeah, I have Bijan Robinson at 1. You have Saquon Barkley at 1. I'll let you start us off here. Why is Saquon your number one guy?
Justin, look, I understand there is a little bit of a trend every year where there's a number one running back, and then the next year they don't repeat. I know a couple years ago it was Jonathan Taylor. And then that next year, I think he had a holdout for his contract and didn't play, and then had some on and off games. I know last year was the famous Christian McCaffrey, won Offensive Player of the Year, could have won MVP, and then it was the number one pick overall last year. And then he had injuries. I think it was in preseason, and he didn't play till I don't remember when he played. It was like the first 5 weeks he was hurt, and then I think he played that one Sunday Night Football in Buffalo, and that was really all you heard from Christian McCaffrey last year. But this year, Justin, it's a new slate. I love Saquon Barkley because he is on the Philadelphia Eagles, the reigning, defending champions, one of the best offense in the league. They're known to have a really great offensive line. I know they have a new coordinator, but they've had different coordinators in and out the past couple years since Sirianni became the head coach. And so to me, it doesn't really affect. I know Kellen Moore was a genius as offense coordinator, but I'm excited for this next offense coordinator to kind of remain going on. And not to mention, they have this thing called the tush push, which there might be times where they might not hit it, right? And I know a lot of defenses I've been seeing the tush push being stopped here and there. And I feel like eventually it could be ultimately figured out, right? You don't have Jason Kelsey there. Now, this offense line is still amazing. And I feel like at the goal line, they're still going to give it to Saquon Barkley. One more thing, Justin. I know your guys, Bijan, these two guys are probably the two best receiving running backs in the league. And I think that's going to help, Saquon Barkley. One of, I guess the top play in the NFL last year came from a catch by Saquon Barkley with the backwards huddle. And he had some, he can still catch it and take it outside of 80. So that's why, for me, I still love Saquon. This offense as well has a lot of mouths to feed. So it's not going to be also dependent on Saquon Barkley, which his games will space out. His top, games will space out throughout the year. They're in a division where they want to win it again. They're in a, conference where there's other teams chasing them. So I think that Saquon Barkley is safe. Now, I wouldn't pick him number 1 overall, Justin. I'd probably pick him like 4th or 5th overall pick.
Okay. All right. That's interesting there. For me, my take on Saquon, unfortunately, is the historical data on running backs who have gotten that much volume as they did in the prior season. We haven't had a repeat RB1 in like 10, 12 years. It's been a long time. I know Gurley was really the only one who had an RB1 season, and then he had an RB3 overall season. But that's kind of been the closest we've had to somebody who's had back-to-back really good years. But for Saquon, it's hard to debate otherwise, because you have such a great team around you. You have arguably the best offensive line in the league. I know Landon Dickerson did get injured, but I expect him to be back. And then, yes, they've actually had a different coordinator every year that, Nick Sirianni has been the coach. They keep getting new guys because either, for Brian Johnson, the guy after they made the Super Bowl, he was bad. They fired him. But they got Kellen Moore. They had Shane Steichen. So they've had already a plethora of different coordinators. So I don't think that changes too much to the offense. I think the only thing that slightly changes with the offense is they decide to throw it a little bit more because they can't put the ball in Saquon's hands that much. They gave it to him a ton. He had, at the end of the year with, all the playoffs, he had well over 400 total opportunities. So he was used so much. They can't do that again, or else he's just not going to make it through the end of the year. That's why I think that they know that, and their scheme's going to change just up a little bit to fix that. But if it doesn't, that's where I'm worried for him. But gosh, you have the same system. I looked it up too. Saquon maybe was a little bit unlucky last year at some points. He fell at the 1 yard line 7 different times last year, and Jalen Hurts was able to take advantage and get the tush push from there. But imagine just one little extra yard and you have another Saquon touchdown. Now something for Saquon that's definitely going to come back is those 50-plus yard runs. He had 6 of them last year. That just that's not a sticky stat. That doesn't happen every year. And so that's going to come down. But I think his touchdowns may go up a little bit. And another thing that I think could go up a little bit is his receiving work if the Eagles decide to pass more, because they were dead last in pass percentage last season. So I think that got to take an uptick. Maybe he gets a few more catches and a few less total rushes. But I think he's in this range. He has to be. And the only argument people can have is that, in the past, running backs haven't been able to do it. But situation's the same. Talent is still great. So I see your argument there. For me, Bijan Robinson, I take him at 1 because from week 6 to 18 last year, when he finally started, Algier finally stopped getting, touches. And, obviously last year he had a new staff in Atlanta with Raheem Morris and Zach Robinson. When they finally started cooking as a unit in week 6, Bijan was the number 1 running back. So from week 6 to 18, the top guy, even over Saquon Barkley. And if you look at this year, his offensive line is top 5 in the league. They get Michael Penix Jr. at quarterback. And I kind of like that Penix is that pocket passer, because we won't see many scrambles from Michael Penix or, designed runs for Michael Penix. If he's in trouble, he's going to dump it off to Bijan Robinson. So I love Bijan as my number 1 guy. I still have him as my number 2 overall pick behind Ja'Marr Chase. But I got Bijan here at 1. We'll move to 2, where it's just flipped. We're nitpicking here. We're just like, this a little bit there, this a little bit there. And that's what you got with these top guys. So I completely understand us there. So we'll move to 3, since we've discussed both of these guys so far. And now we're back on the same page here with Jahmyr Gibbs as our 3rd running back for this draft. Now, if you look at it, Jahmyr Gibbs, obviously, without David Montgomery, is the RB1. To me, hands down, no doubt about it. When he's by himself, he is the best in the league. Now, the only reason he has dropped from 1 to 3 is the presence of David Montgomery. And I think this year, the way that things have been looking in camp, it looks like Montgomery's usage is going just a little bit down. Maybe instead of literally 50-50, we get 60-40 Jahmyr. And with that, I think this is a valid spot for him. He still has a solid offensive line. I know Frank Ragnow has left, but I think it's still going to be really good. And if this team takes a step back due to play calling and stuff, they're still going to be able to rely on Jahmyr Gibbs here. So I still think he's a really solid pick, and he is in that tier 2. We got Bijan, we got Saquon, and we got Jahmyr Gibbs. They're all kind of together, similar to when we talked about the tight ends last episode. I think this is kind of the first tier running backs.
Yeah, Justin, Jahmyr Gibbs last year had a total of, I want to say, 20 touchdowns. He had 16 rushing and 4 receiving, which is crazy when he has David Montgomery there getting 185 carries in the season last year. So last year, Gibbs finishes with 1,400 rushing yards, while Montgomery finishes with 775 rushing yards. That is crazy, Justin. The fact that Gibbs was able to do that with possibly the second, this team has the 2 best running backs in one team, right? And so Montgomery's probably the best RB, second RBs on the depth chart in all the league, right? And it's like, I love what he was able to do even in the postseason games, Justin. He still had a great game. I know they only played 1 game against Washington. Jahmyr Gibbs had 105 rushing yards and 2 touchdowns. This is a game where they scored 31 points. He even had 70 yards catching. It's like, this guy can do it all. He's a video game in human form. And I do think that this is what we saw. This is like the vision we saw 2 years ago, right? I remember in 2023, it was Gibbs and Montgomery. Montgomery had just joined the team out of Chicago. And, everyone was like, well, okay, Montgomery's going to be good in a year or so. Here's the time. This is the time that Montgomery is the RB1. He kind of reminds me of Jamal Charles a little bit in the heyday of Jamal Charles when he was on the Chiefs. with Alex Smith, those first couple years that Andy Reid had gotten there. It's kind of like that. He has the speed. He has the receiving. He has it all. He's one of the most complete backs in the league. He can do it all. He's kind of like Saquon in a way. Saquon's, different, built different. But I just love Gibbs this year. I think that even if the lines are inconsistent offensively, they have issues with Jared Goff and that people think that might happen, Jahmyr Gibbs will be the only consistent focal point. I'm thinking he's more consistent than Amon-Ra St. Brown, and for sure we won't see much of Montgomery. And I do think that Jahmyr Gibbs is no doubt the third best running back right now in fantasy.
Yeah, and if you look at it, when they both joined the team, Montgomery was the clear red zone goal line back. Set it and forget it. You knew Montgomery was going to come in near the goal line. But it really changed up this year. It was actually really close to being even between the two. So Gibbs is, slowly but surely taking some touches away from Montgomery. You just can't keep Jahmyr Gibbs off the field. He's too much of a lightning bolt, too much of a game changer. And honestly, thank goodness I was able to trade for him last year and watch his games, because if I'm playing against him, I'm scared every time he touches the ball. Like, he could take it to the house. He's got that speed. He's got the agility. So I think it's great here. I don't think there's much more we can say besides he's got the skills to be an RB1. He shares a little bit with another running back, but he's still just by far the best and on one of the best offenses in the league. We'll move to 4 here, where we both have Derrick Henry. This makes it easy. Obviously, Derrick Henry. What else can you say about him besides he's an absolute beast? I know he's old. I know he's an older back, but he's an alien. He's different than any other running back that's come in this league, in my opinion. So you can't compare him to others. He's one of the very few, maybe the only guy you can do that with. So people who are like, well, he's old, you can't rely on him. He is different. He is built different. If you stood next to him, you'd be like, this guy's not a human. And what gets me actually more excited for this year is last year, the Ravens defense was really bad, actually. One of the bottom defenses, especially against in the passing game. That's why Lamar had to do some shootouts. And there were some games where they needed Justice Hill in because they needed, a receiving back. But this year, they've improved that secondary room a bunch. They add Jair Alexander. Super excited about that. Another year with Nate Wiggins. You got Marlon Humphrey. It might be one of the best cornerback rooms in the league. And with that, it makes me more excited that the Ravens are going to be in the lead even more than they were last year. And I think I discussed this on TikTok, which we are also on Dween Nation a lot. Go check those out. But Derrick Henry got 81% of his touches last year when the Ravens were in the lead. And I expect him to be in the lead even more and wanting to, soak away games, just run out games. And I think Derrick Henry's going to be that guy for them. And I think, he's always defied the odds. He's always overachieved. And currently people are still drafting him lower than this. I think he's actually at ADP 4 right now. And I think that's a very valid pick here. I don't know if he has the ability to be the RB1 because of that receiving work he does not get, but he is probably the safest guy in the draft. He's going to end the season top 5. Derrick Henry, what else can you say?
I mean, Justin, you got to make the argument now, literally, that he might be one of the best running backs in the NFL, in NFL history. I mean, yeah. I'm starting to say he is a top 11 running back of all time. I mean, career-wise, 11,000 yards, 106 rushing touchdowns. He has rushing touchdowns, outside of 60, 70, 80, 90. I mean, I'm looking at a 98 long rush, a 94, a 60. I mean, this guy can take it from anywhere at the house. He's won a Heisman. He's won a national championship. The only thing he's missing is Super Bowl, Justin. And I think that he may get it this year. However, Justin, I think that the receiving doesn't really matter, Justin. He was only 79 yards away from 2,000 yards rushing. This is a team that has the best rushing quarterback of all time. And you're telling me Derrick Henry was 79 yards away from 2,000 yards. That is absolutely ridiculous. Not to mention, he had 16 rushing touchdowns, just like Jahmyr Gibbs. But Lamar Jackson only had 4 rushing touchdowns? So that's kind of crazy in my opinion. If you really think about it, the team with the best rushing quarterback of all time, that running back, Derrick Henry, was only 79 yards away from 2,000. That is unbelievable. I think maybe he might not get 1,900. I'm still thinking 1,700, Justin. And maybe about, yes, he scored 16 touchdowns. I'm thinking about 14, 13. He's a goal line beast. And there's really not much to say about it. He's a future Hall of Famer, one of the best running backs of our generation, if not the best running back of our generation. When you really think about it, since high school, college, and now right now in the last 10 years, he's literally one of the best running backs. I think he's without, I know Adrian Peterson has an MVP there, Justin, but I mean, Derrick Henry is an MVP or Super Bowl MVP shy being the best running back of our era. of our era.
Yeah, and then one more thing I want to bring up with Derrick Henry. Last season, on 325 carries, which is a humongous amount, he averaged 5.9 yards per carry. Every running back that averaged or that had 55 carries or more were under that total. So he essentially is the most efficient running back. He's the biggest running back. He's on one of the best offenses in the league. It doesn't get much better than that. Yes, he's missing the receiving work, but you're right. I think at the end of the day, it doesn't really matter. He's going to get the touches needed to help you win your fantasy leagues. We'll move to our running backs 5 here. I'll start. I got CMC, and it's for the one reason that if he is healthy, he is going to be number 1 running back, minimum number 2 running back. He is just so talented. He gets all the catches. And if you look at this 49ers team, who else are they going to go to? I mean, no Debo. Ayuk is hurt. We talked about it in the tight ends episode. Yes, they do have George Kittle, who will be the number 1 pass catcher. That's a wide receiver or tight end. But McCaffrey, man, he's going to be this entire offense, it seems. The offensive line is solid. The defense is actually, they got worse going into this year. I know they brought back Robert Saleh, but they lost a lot of good players on the roster. So I think that they're just going to need to be in games more. Now, Isaac Guerrero is hurt. Jordan James is hurt. So the RB2 and 3 on this 49ers team are injured. They're going to have to give this guy all the work. Now, that's the only thing is, will his body hold up? And that's up to you if you want to take the risk on it. I kind of have it baked in, the risk just a little bit. That's why he's not at RB1, the risk of injury. But I understand this being scared because, we talked about it in the mock draft episode. You don't win your league in the first round, but you could lose it. And if you decide to take that chance on Christian McCaffrey and he gets hurt early, it might, your season might be wrapped up. But that's kind of my DMC.
Yeah, Justin, I mean, it's really tough to say. I mean, for me, I'm going to be honest, I'm staying away from Christian McCaffrey everywhere. Now, if he drops to the second round, maybe if I don't know if this is a possibility, but if, let's say I have the first pick, right, Justin? And let's say I get my Ja'Marr Chase, you come back around and I get those back-to-back picks, right? At the end of the second and the beginning of the third, sure, I'd take Christian McCaffrey. That is the only scenario, Justin. I have a ton of concerns with this 49ers team. I think they're going to have a double Super Bowl hangover, meaning 2 years removed from the Super Bowl loss. I think it's going to linger in. And I got to tell you something, Justin. I mean, yeah, he might have fresh legs because he only played 2 games last year. But I'm still, something about this 49ers team just feels dysfunctional. Not to mention that it is kind of like the Super Bowl home curse, where only 2 teams have won a Super Bowl at home, right, in their home stadium, with Tampa and LA. I don't think it's ever going to happen again. San Francisco is hosting the Super Bowl. And, you look at the Saints last year, they were kind of dysfunctional. Kamara didn't do anything. That's where the Super Bowl was this past season in New Orleans. And so this year it's kind of going to be a repeat where the team I know it has nothing to do with them. The team that's hosting the Super Bowl won't do much offensively. You don't see much out of them. But I'm gonna talk about my guy right here, Jonathan Taylor, because, I know there's some issues going on with Anthony Richardson in the hand. He was able to practice yesterday. I do think that no matter who the quarterback is, whether it's Daniel Jones, I think that Jonathan Taylor is going to benefit. He's going to really be really good running back there, Justin. I'm a believer in Jonathan Taylor. I think that, what he was able to do in the fantasy playoffs alone last year, Justin, I mean, you and I were on the back end of that because we had him in different leagues. You had him in our main league. I had him in our elite league, and he was absolutely killing it there in the fantasy playoffs. And I think that no matter what, Shane Steichen and this offensive staff is always going to have the running game pretty much down to the T. And I feel like Jonathan Taylor, he's the only guy there. I mean, you don't really have to worry about anybody there. He got paid a few years ago. So really, there's really not much to say there, Justin. I mean, he's the lead guy. He's still pretty young. He's shown you that he can be an RB1. I love the way he finished. So that's why, for me, Justin, he's a no-brainer at number 5.
Yeah, Jonathan Taylor here, he's a tough one because obviously the way he ended last year was the best. He was the RB1 over the last few weeks of the season. But before that, I mean, going into the fantasy playoffs, he was the 17th running back in points per game. He got vaulted up to RB5 with those 3 weeks. The thing really is, I mean, we both had to go through it. He wasn't good enough based on where we were drafting him. And I bet most teams that had Jonathan Taylor didn't get to enjoy those weeks of 44 points, of being the RB1 those last few weeks because they didn't make the playoffs or they didn't make that next round of the playoffs because he just wasn't there yet. And so I think that's tough to really grade him on that back end. I think the Colts really realized that, hey, we're not going to make it. Let's just give it to our guy. Jonathan Taylor, and he showed out. But now you look at this year. I think Anthony Richardson is going to be the starter, but that's not good for Jonathan Taylor. He wasn't great with him, with Anthony Richardson at the quarterback, starting. I kind of hope it's Daniel Jones just for the sake of him getting the volume. And then the other negative I have is they lost 2 starting offensive linemen, both to the Vikings, and that could hurt them as well. But in the positive end of it, this is Shane Steichen's last chance. This is GM Chris Ballard's last chance. This is Anthony Richardson's last chance. And you're right, there's not that many targets around him that are reliable. I know they got Josh Downs, and they got Pittman, and they got Pierce, and they just drafted Tyler Warren. But none of those guys are alphas. Jonathan Taylor is the clear best player on the field for the Colts, and that's why you got to give it to him. You got to give him this, somewhat higher ranking. I think I'm a little bit worried about him. I did have him last year, and I went through all the highs and lows with him. But it's really tough because Anthony Richardson and him did not mesh. Anthony Richardson's a running quarterback, doesn't check him down much, and steals touchdowns near the goal line. So that's what makes it tough for me. Now, if they do switch to Daniel Jones, my tune might change. But right now, I'm on the fence, leaning no right now, in my opinion. I still have him ranked, I believe, inside the top 10. Yeah, I definitely do. But here at 5, I don't have him there yet. We'll see when I have him. We'll move to the next running backs. At 6, I have Ashton Jeanty. At 6, you have Josh Jacobs. I'll start with the rookie, Ashton Jeanty, 6th overall pick by the Las Vegas Raiders. Kind of the highest touted running back coming into the NFL since probably Saquon Barkley. Where is the hesitancy here? It is kind of with the Raiders. The offensive line is one of the worst in the league, probably bottom 10. Obviously, we saw a little bit of that in the preseason. I don't want to overreact to it, but it is there. That is something. And the Raiders have just shown to be a dumpster fire the last, for a good while. And I really like the improvements they made with Geno Smith, Pete Carroll, Chip Kelly. You have Brock Bowers and you have Jacoby Myers, so you have some targets around you. But I understand the doubt there. A lot of people think, the last top 10 running back that was picked was Bijan Robinson, and he underwhelmed. Everybody decided to jump on him in the first round, and it didn't work out. Same thing with Clyde Edwards-Helaire. Didn't happen there. So there are some instances where it doesn't work out, but I still think you got to give him the benefit of the doubt. He was able at Boise State to handle 374 carries last year. That is a crazy amount of work. I know he was essentially the entire Boise State team, and now he joins a Raiders offense where they can't just stack the box because you have a very accurate quarterback in Geno Smith. You have one of the best tight ends of the league in Brock Bowers. So I think he's going to have the opportunity. I don't think 33, 34-year-old Raheem Mostert's going to take touches from him. So I think he's in line to be in the top 5 to top 6 in total touches for the running backs. And that's why I think he's really solid at the back end of your first round.
Yeah, Justin, I'm not going to lie. I have some concerns about I do have concerns about Ashton Jeanty there. First of all, it's the team that he's on. I just don't know if they're going to be in situations where he's going to get a lot of goal line targets or goal line rushes. Not to mention, are they going to be ahead of a lot of these games where they need to milk the clock? Is this offensive line good? Does Pete Carroll knows what he's doing? He is one of the oldest head coaches in the NFL. I think if not, he is the oldest head coach in the NFL. Is his offensive scheme up to date to attack these opposing NFL defenses? You're in a division with the Chiefs, who have Chris Jones and that tough pass rush. You're in a division with Harbaugh, who, historically has had pretty good front sevens there in his defenses, right? And especially when he was in Michigan. And then you're in a division with Sean Payton, whose his defense has been pretty good. And Denver is one of the highest drafted defenses in fantasy, Justin. And so it's very concerning because those are there's 6 matchups of the year that you're going to be concerned there. And it's just very concerning because are they going to use them? I mean, are they going to give him 20 carries? I mean, yeah, they draft him. Why not? It's just a ton of concerns. Is he going to be involved in the receiving game there? Is like, for example, Justin, if the Vegas Raiders are down 15, 20, whatever, are they going to still find a way to get him the ball? It's just so many things. There's so many red flags right now. Not to mention, I love GT in college, but I mean, he was having okay games against top teams. But it wasn't like he was a difference maker. I mean, I really would have liked to see dominant games against the SEC, the Big 10, the Big 12. I mean, we saw some games where it was good on paper, but like during the game, did he make an impact? There's just a ton of red flags. I think Jeanty will be good next year. And it's just those running backs in the rookie year where you're kind of shaky. Guys like Najee Harris, even like Jahmyr Gibbs, right, Justin, where he was behind Montgomery and we still weren't sure about the Lions. Gibbs' rookie year, and he was really hot and cold. It was on and off. People were disappointed. I feel like it's going to be a kind of a thing with Jeanty where you're going to expect so much out of him off the bat. Also, I know this is a different position, but similar to Marvin Harrison last year, where he wasn't getting a ton of, having a ton of great games. He'd have a 100-yard game and a touchdown here and there, but for the most part, he wasn't posting wide receiver one numbers. Like here, I won't think that GT is going to be posting RB1 numbers off the bat. He won't be effective all the way yet. That's my biggest concern. But to flip side, I'm going to go ahead and talk about Josh Jacobs there, who was absolutely phenomenal last year. I mean, if there was such thing as team MVPs, no doubt Jacobs would be unanimous team MVP for the Green Bay Packers. Not to mention the Packers struggled the back end of the season. They looked pretty good to start the season. They kind of fell off. Obviously, they're in a tough division. But Justin, check out these numbers there. With Josh Jacobs there last year, literally he had 1,300 yards, 15 touchdowns. He's one of the highest scoring running backs in fantasy. Phenomenal. He was great. He even had a receiving touchdown there. And I think that this year it's only going to get better. I think this year he's going to get about 1,500 yards. And then last year he had 15 touchdowns. I think he's going to be able to replicate those numbers because I think that there's going to be times when Jordan Love in this offense isn't going to be throwing all so much. So I feel like Josh Jacobs is going to be getting the goal line carries. Not to mention there's really no one on this depth chart that can really challenge the talent of a Josh Jacobs. We're looking at Emmanuel Wilson, Marshawn Lloyd, Chris Brooks. These are the guys that I'm not worried about them even getting 5 plays in the whole game, right? So I really love Josh Jacobs. He's a bell cow. He can do it all there. He was doing great when he was in Vegas, where Jeanty is now, and now he's on a better offense and a better scheme. And I feel like LaFleur loves his running backs. We were getting top finishes from Aaron Jones a few years ago. Now we have Josh Jacobs. So no worries here for me. He is definitely right where he needs to be at number 6.
Honestly, you're convincing me more and more with Josh Jacobs. I have him a little bit lower than consensus. I have him at RB9. He's currently going at RB8. But I actually think all the points you made are right on the money. I think, for me at least, the running backs 7 through 9 are pretty interchangeable. When we get there, we'll talk about him. But for Josh Jacobs, you're right. He's on a great offense. And I think even it's a little important now with Jordan Love's injury. I know that he's expected to be ready by week 1, but they're not going to want to just let it loose immediately. And I don't think they're going to want to change up the scheme of this offense too much because when Josh Jacobs was handling a lot of the load, they are winning games. They're a playoff team. So I think that you're right. Josh Jacobs is still top guy in this league. I'm not worried about. Yeah, you're right. I'm not worried about Lloyd or Wilson or Brooks behind him. Lloyd obviously is already injured again. Unfortunately for him, but I think Jacobs, gosh, he's going to get all the work. He's going to get a ton of carries. I remember playing him in a game where he literally got like 20 plus carries in the first half. Like he was getting so many touches. The Packers know and rely on him. That's why they decided, we don't want Aaron Jones anymore. We want this guy, in a twist last year. But I do really like Josh Jacobs. I think you can't go wrong with him in the second round. I think it's great for him there. We'll move to RB7, I have Devon Achane. You have Christian McCaffrey. Let's talk about my, fellow Texas A&M Aggie, Devon Achane. Obviously, last year, phenomenal. He played most of the games. He didn't play every game last season, but he was just so good. He was so good. He was a part of every game, but he left one game injured. But with Achane, man, with Tua Tagovailoa, he was the RB1 in all games with Tua Tagovailoa overall. Best running back in football because he was getting a crazy amount of catches. He was the focal point of the offense. Obviously, Tyreek was playing hurt and ineffective. They had Jonnu and they had Waddle, who was also hurt and ineffective. But you look at this year, I don't expect too much more to happen with those wide receivers. In my opinion, I'm expecting kind of the same, not the injury-wise, but the production. I think a lot of teams figured out the Dolphins. They figured out, hey, we just need to limit those deep plays, those game-breaking plays that Tyreek's, been known to do. They did that, and the Dolphins fell apart. And the only thing that allowed them to be successful last year was targeting Devon Achane and targeting Jonnu Smith. And now Jonnu Smith is on the Pittsburgh Steelers. They bring in Darren Waller, but come on, he didn't play football last year. He's retired. He was retired. He's been rapping. I'm not expecting much from Darren Waller. Devon Achane, I expect the same usage this season. And as long as he stays healthy, he's right in this range as a top 5, and I think he even has the ability to be the RB1 if things go his way, especially with the Dolphins defense being really bad this year. I expect him to be one of the worst. I expect that the Dolphins are going to need to be throwing in the games at all points, and Devon Achane is going to need to be on the field, especially with how bad Jalen Wright has been in camp. And the next guy is Ollie Gordon, who's a 6th-round running back from Oklahoma State. I expect big things for Achane as long as he's healthy.
Yeah, Justin, here's what's so interesting about Devon Achane. He didn't hit 1,000 yards rushing. He was pretty close, but he had a total of 1,500 yards between rushing and receiving. He had a total of 12 touchdowns between rushing and receiving. And that to me is very intriguing as far as when we're talking about fantasy. He had 592 receiving yards. And it's crazy that he had 87 targets. Am I reading that right, Justin? 87 receiving targets. I don't know if I'm reading that right. It hasn't right. That's crazy, Justin. He had 78 catches. I mean, why not draft him at the end of the first round? I mean, this guy's going to be phenomenal. And he was doing this while Tua Tagovailoa was missing games. This offense was very inconsistent at a lot of point. My only thing with Devon Achane, we talked about this off camera, where he has some injury issues. He didn't miss, I want to say it was 6 or 7 games his rookie year. I know Mostert was there leading the backfield at the time, so I guess no worries there. I know he missed some games in Texas A&M, a little bit of an injury issue. That's my only thing with Devon Achane. I mean, his rookie year, he was still able to get 800 yards. I know some of that came from that 70-20 blowout game against the Broncos a few years ago. And he had 8 touchdowns his rookie year, so that's very impressive. I mean, this guy, is falling under the radar there, Justin, and I would not bat an eye if you pick him in the 2nd round. You get your nice little running. If you can get 2 running backs, right? But in the first 3 rounds, and Achane is one of them, I am looking at your team, and I am impressed because, Justin, 87 targets receiving. Come on there. That is phenomenal, Justin. Could you imagine if he gets 87 this year in his 3rd year in the NFL season and the Dolphins offense is rolling? Justin, I'm thinking maybe 800 yards receiving and maybe 7 to 8 touchdowns receiving alone. And then the rushing, shoot, Justin, he was about 80, 85, maybe 90 yards away from 1,000. I can definitely think he gets 1,000 yards this year. Miami, I'm not as down as him as I am on the 49ers. I think Mike McDaniels is in somewhat of a prove-it year, a little bit of a strange guy, so I don't know how management feels about him. So I think that he's going to need to prove that he needs all his offensive tools there. And so I think if Miami is healthy, they're all healthy, Tua healthy, I think they can be a really good offense. Not to mention, in some ways, this division is winnable. Like, you got Josh Allen and the Bills, but is their offense really that good? Josh Allen's going to be leading the way to win this division. He's going to do everything he can. But the Jets, the Dolphins can beat the Jets. The Dolphins can beat the Patriots. This division in some way is winnable for Miami, a team that was in the playoffs just a couple of seasons ago. So I think that the Achane is definitely going to be a bell cow bow. Not to mention the depth chart isn't too intimidating. So as long as he's healthy, Justin, he will be right here. I think he will finish at number 7 there when it's all said and done at the end of the season.
Yeah, and the one last thing is people think, oh, he's a small back. He's not a goal line back. Well, he was 11th in red zone touches last year. He was a guy that they utilized during, near the goal line, even with Raheem Mostert there. So he really did become that workhorse back last year. I agree with Achane. He's got tremendous upside here at RB7. We'll move to 8. We're actually both aligned here with Chase Brown. Obviously, last year he stepped up. Zach Moss was the presumed starter when the season started. He, started losing some touches. Then he got hurt, out for the rest of the year. Chase Brown stepped in and was a top 4 running back the rest of the season once he became the starter. He's on the best offense in the league, you could argue. And, even their offensive coordinator said that he could have an Austin Eckler type season. So he's got a lot of praise going towards him in one of the best offenses in the league. He's able to get a lot of receiving work. Unfortunately, the offensive line is doo-doo, and there's a doubt there, I guess. They bring in actually 2 pass-catching running backs in Samaje Perine and Taj Brooks, but I think they're clearly worse than, Chase Brown, and I think they're only in just to give Brown rest plays when he's, been in all game. But, he was a big reason why the Bengals were able to make that run to almost make the playoffs last year. He stepped up big time. He was a touchdown guy as well. He was able to score a lot of touchdowns. And he fits all the bill. Like, I think he's a really excited player you can get in the early 3rd or even a late 2nd. That's up to you if you want to take that jump on him. But I think he's a great player and a guy that I don't see him busting where he's a guy that's outside the top 20 at running back. I think he's pretty safe.
Yeah, I definitely think he have an Austin Eckler type year. I mean, he wears number 30 just like Austin Eckler, so that's, step one. And he was 10 yards away from 1,000 yards of rushing last year. And this is a guy that's more considered of a receiving back. Looking at his receiving yards there, he did have 360 as far as receiving yards with about, 4 touchdowns here. I think those numbers are all going to go up this year. I think he's going to hit, if he got about 54 receptions last year, I think he's going to get Justin around 72 catches. And I'm thinking about, this is an offense that's going to be throwing the football. So I'm going to go out and say he gets about 560 to 700 receiving yards. And he did have 4 receiving touchdowns. And I'm going to bump that to 7. So that receiving alone, I do think he hits 1,000 yards, like right smack there. Like I would say 1,010 yards, like barely like, the last game of the season, he gets over 1,000. He did have 7 rushing touchdowns. I think that remains the same. So I think in total, he's going to have about 14 to 15 total touchdowns there with about 75 catches. I think he's in prime for a big year, not to mention the depth chart. This isn't anybody I'm worried about. Like Samaje Perine does have history with this team. He was on their Super Bowl run team. But he was behind Joe Mixon, who Perine was okay. Even in Kansas City last year, he was like all right. Not really even all right. Even when Pacheco went out, they were still throwing off that Carson guy. They were still throwing in the fullback over Perine in Kansas City. So, Perine is not anybody to worry about. Neither is Taj Brooks. So Chase Brown is perfect right here at number 8.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. Super high on him this year. We'll move to 9. We already talked about Josh Jacobs, but I'll throw it to you. What are your thoughts with Kyren Williams here at 9?
Justin, I love Kyren Williams. I think they just extended him, if I'm not mistaken. So I'm feeling very confident that Sean McVay is going to get him involved in this year. This Rams offense is actually really fun to watch. Stafford is battling a little bit of a back injury, but if he's healthy the whole year, this offense will be a top 6 to 7 offense all year. And I think Kyren Williams is going to have a lot to say on it. And I think what Kyren Williams was able to do last year, had somewhat of a quiet year. But Justin, he still had 14 touchdowns. He played 16 games, which is absolutely phenomenal. The only thing is that the only thing I'm a little worried is, are they going to somehow try to get Blake Corum involved? That's my only question with this Rams offense. I know Sean McVay historically has only really used one running back, Todd Gurley, and then they had Darrell Henderson and Cam Akers. I think he kind of used one at a time unless injuries happen. Now he has Kyren Williams, and 14 touchdowns is enough in my opinion. He does get involved here and there in the receiving. He did have 2 receiving touchdowns last year, and so I love it. I think he's going to get the majority of the carries there. The only thing is, I think they might get Blake Corum a little bit involved, but other than that, I'm not too worried about it. They use Kyren a ton. He's a great red zone target there, a great red zone running back there, so he will get the goal line carries for sure. No matter what. And so he did have a pretty good season last year. Quiet. A lot of people aren't talking about it, but he's been good his first, couple years in the league there. So I'm not really worried about him.
I'm not worried about him either. I think you said a lot of things right. With him, the last 2 years, he's been the RB6 in both years. So he's already showed consistency to be, a top guy at the running back position. You're right. They extended him. They showed belief in him, that he is their franchise running back. And I'm actually not worried whatsoever with the backup running backs. I think you're right. Corum may get 2 to 3 carries a game, but he's not going to be a guy that takes substantial work from Kyren Williams. They've picked a running back in the last 8 drafts. Yet every year they have a primary guy. If it's not Kyren, it was Todd Gurley. So I think that Kyren's in line to just be great again this year. I don't think much changes. There is the concern with Matthew Stafford with his back. If he misses time, it dampers it a little bit. It dampers it dampens it less than it hurts Puka and Devontae Adams, because they might just go ahead and try to rely on Kyren even more if Matthew Stafford is injured. So I think Kyren is a great play this season. I think he's kind of just going to be the same guy he was last year. He was 3rd in inside the 5 goal line carries last year, so he's their guy near the goal line. He doesn't get a lot of catches, and I guess you could throw worry there, but that's just how the Rams are structured. It's not like there's another running back stealing his catches. So I see him similar with the Derrick Henry production, where I just don't think it matters at the end of the day. He's going to be getting so much volume on a really good offense in the Rams. So I think you're right. He's a great play there. I'm pretty sure I have him right next at 10. So we both, are really high on these guys. These obviously are the top 10 running backs. I think we might have another episode going into 11 through 20 just because, how important those guys are as well. So we'll wrap it up here as our top 10 running backs episode is up. Super excited to discuss more with our, our rankings for this season. But I also want to put out, Dween Nation, please go out and check out our TikTok, our Instagram, our YouTube Shorts, as well as what you're watching now. Because we're pumping out content there as well, in short form style, either clips from episodes like these or even our own things where we just, sometimes I'm just like, hey man, I want to talk about this thing or this piece of news just came out. Let's discuss it. That's the quickest way you'll get to us. So please check out the TikTok. We're continuing to grow there, here, just about everywhere. So thank you guys for listening. Genoa, send us out.
Yo, Dween Nation. This was our top 10 running backs here going into 2025. Like I said, to start this episode, we're so excited for the season to start there. So we're going to be dropping a ton of content, man. Stay tuned with us. Comment down below. Let us know if we missed some running backs. I know this is a really deep, running back room this year as far as fantasy. But thank you guys for watching. We love you guys. And as always, peace.